Today we're diving into a plugin that promises to make your digital footage look like it was shot on good old-fashioned film, without the need for a time machine. It's called Dehancer, and if you're like me and you love the look of vintage film but don't love the idea of lugging around 35mm camera and all the equipment that goes with it, this might be the plugin for you. So let's get rolling. First of all, Dehancer did provide me with a temporary license of this plugin in order for me to do a fair and honest evaluation of the product's capabilities. I've not been compensated in any way, and all the opinions are my own, and Dehancer is not seeing this review until you're seeing this review. Dehancer kind of sounds like something you'd use to take the shine off a car, right? I mean, this plugin is about adding that beautiful, nostalgic film look to your digital videos. So whether you're an indie filmmaker or a commercial videographer or just someone who likes to make their TikTok reels look extra classy, Dehancer's got you covered. Once you get it, you'll need to go ahead and download all the profiles and cameras and whatnot that come with the application. That's all very simple. You run the download process, and then you can see here, it pulls down films, it pulls down the cameras, any kind of print media, any of that other stuff gets pulled down, installed for you automatically. This doesn't come down as part of the original install, and this is something that you can update from time to time as new profiles are released. We're going to shoot on over to the interface and start playing around with it. First things first, let's take a look at the clip that we're going to be working with today. And this is some drone footage that was taken off my back porch. The beauty of doing this with the drone is that I don't need to rent a camera with a crane or any of that other stuff. I just take the drone up and I slowly take that video up like I can do right here. Now, I'm going to go into Final Cut Pro here and just turn on my browser real quick, and I'm going to drag an adjustment layer. I always use adjustment layers when I'm playing around with plugins like this, and I'm just going to extend it out for the length of the clip. And I'm going to drag the Dehancer plugin right into that adjustment layer. And immediately you see what happens. Well, why is it doing that? Film stocks. Let's talk about film stocks. Now, Dehancer comes with a library of film stocks that would make even the most hardcore geek raise an eyebrow. Kodak, Fujifilm, and more. It's like having a virtual film lab right in your editing software. You know, you just pick a favorite and you slap it on your clip and boom, instant film vibes. So here you can see that it's been assigned the Kodak Vision 250D. There are a ridiculous amount of different film stocks to choose from. And these film stocks are they're like preset color grades, but they are based on the actual film. So if you're used to running with a certain type of film, if you harken back to, a time where you were using film, or you remember this from film school, you may be able to just take your existing knowledge and apply it here. If not, if you're somebody like me and you love to just play around and you have no prior knowledge, this is the perfect time to do it. I'm going to use the Pro Image 100, and you can see what that does. It's pretty similar to the original, right? See that? And if you look at my color parade there, you can see the colors are very similar. This is our input source here, and we can play around with our exposure compensation. Right now you can see, because it is a full-fledged color grading program, I can start messing around with my exposure values. You can see right now I'm sitting at about 90 IRE across the board. Clearly with the orange in the center of the shot here, I'm going to have more red than I will green or blue. That's fine. So I'm just going to leave it as is. Now, there are things like here, for instance, if I wanted to use the exposure compensation, I could drag this down. Like I said, we can choose different film stocks. I'm just going to leave it at this. See, if I wanted to like Supra 100, you could see what that does. It's a little bit different. Actually, I kind of like that. Let's leave it. So then we have Here we have film developer and film compression. They are collapsed by default. So if I click on show here, you can see that the film developer allows me to adjust the contrast, color boost. It's not enabled by default. And you can see with the expansion that is enabled. And what that does is it allows me to set my black point. So I'm gonna drag that up a little bit and you see what happens in my colors. Now down here, I'm getting closer to 0 across the board. So I'm gonna leave that. I already have the darkness from the center trees here. And if I go back, you'll see that that all drops down. So I am clearly crushing my shadows. You know, the darker areas of the image, I'm crushing them. That's okay. I really just want the silhouette of the trees anyway. I don't want a ton of detail in here. This is more of an artistic thing. This is the fun part of color grading, is that you get to add your vision to it. By default, this also has a film grain applied to it. And right now you can see it's set to, the film grain is 35 millimeter, that ISO 250, and that works fine. You can also see that there is other settings for this. So if I wanted to go to like ISO 250 at 8 millimeter, well, boom, you can see all of a sudden, I mean, I don't really have to zoom in, but I will. And you can see what that grain does. It's pretty substantial. You can see all that grain right there. So I will usually use the 65 or the 35. So if I do 65 ISO 250, you can see how much grain we get. Now here's a cool thing about the way Dehancer works. Dehancer has all these presets. So far that's all we've been working with is presets for the most part. But it also has the ability to go in to any one of these presets and customize it. Let's take a look at that. So you've got under film grain here, if I wanted to change this to something that was more custom, I go to the custom tab here. And now I can set the size of my grain. Obviously much bigger is not what we're going for. I like it where it was. And then I've got the amount of grain, the film resolution, shadows, and this is the critical part here. Shadows, midtones, and highlights. The shadows have a bit of noise in them. You can't see them all that much, but they're there. You can see it, right? Right around here, you start to see it. And I want to get rid of that. Now, this is the difference between a plugin that simply slaps a filter on top of an image and something that actually works with the image beneath it to produce an effect. That's what Dehancer does. So Dehancer will take the shadows and then go ahead, and if I want to drag the amount of grain and the shadows down, you can see it's significantly reduced at this point, while it hasn't touched the mids or the highs. If I want to drag my midtones down, see that? There's a lot less, right? And you still, now you just see it in the highs, and I can bring those highlights down too. And all of a sudden you don't have any noise or any film grain. So we want to keep that as is. But that's the beauty of the plugin, is that you get to have it so that it only affects certain parts of your image. That's a big difference from what you see elsewhere. Now let's move on from film grain and go over to one of my favorite parts of the plugin, which is halation. If I turn halation on, it's off by default. You can see the effect that it has. Halation adds kind of like a red aura effect around high contrast, light to dark areas. So mask portion on. This is something that's really cool about the way Dehancer works, is that I can see where exactly it is appearing in my image. You see that? So this tells me that if I turn this mask off again, you can see it. You see how it makes things just a little bit redder. And considering that I'm trying to take this from what was a mid-spring film shot to something that may look more like a summer evening. So I'm going to leave that as is with the halation. Then I'm gonna go to the bloom section. Now bloom, if I turn that on, you can see what bloom does. It adds where there is a brighter image it'll add some bloom. And so if I turn that 8, you can see very clearly where that bloom is happening. You can see now where it is. So again, I like to keep it more in tune with the effect that you would get is if you were using the actual film. But sometimes you may be going for an artistic look that is not necessarily going to match what you would get on film anyway, which is the beauty of the way Dehancer works, is that it can mimic the physical, but at the same time, it can go way outside of that and then do things that you couldn't possibly do with film or with straight digital video. Film damage is something that, as its name implies, will actually make it look like there are certain injuries to your film, whether it be hair or dust or streaks or whatever. You tend to not see this. It's a very subtle effect when you're matching your the type of film size that you're going for. So if I'm doing 35 millimeter, for instance, and I say that it's enabled, I won't see a whole lot of difference, right? But if I were to switch this to say 8 millimeter, boom, I can see it immediately. There's an effect in here, and you can see right there as I scroll. Now that's pretty god awful. Somebody didn't handle the film right. So if I switch this back to 35, you'll see it's very subtle. Matter of fact, almost to the point where you don't even notice it. The next one is film breath, and that is the simulation of when you are passing film through the gate in the projector, and you sometimes get variations in how that film is passing through, the speed at which it's passing through, and then also the distance from the light source. So in some cases you might get a little bit of flickering, and it's much more pronounced for the the smaller films like the 8 millimeter and 16 millimeter. But if I turn that on, you won't notice much of an effect here. If I were to say do it with 8 millimeter again, and I scroll, you can see that effect. I'll leave this at 35 just for giggles. And then finally, we'll go over to the gate weave. There's a couple more features I'll get into, but gate weave is basically, if you think of what happens when you turn this on, you notice the image will kind of zoom in a little bit. All right, you see that? That gives you enough space to move the image around as if, again, it was traveling through the projector and the teeth on the projector were just off slightly enough to where the film shifted a little bit. This is much more prominent in 80s style films, 60s, 70s, not so much late 80s, early 90s and on, but this is something that definitely did happen, and you may not remember it because you were so used to seeing it if you went to the theater and you watched these movies, but trust me, it did exist. It was there. So I'm gonna leave it on, and I'm also gonna put it down at 16 just so it's a little bit more pronounced. The final settings down here, you've got Overscan. Essentially what this does, I'll turn it on real quick just so you can see, but this adds essentially film strip effects to your image. I don't ever use this. Now, it's not that it's not a useful feature, but for the purposes of making a video or a movie, chances are you're not going to want somebody to see a simulated film strip. I mean, that's just my guess. However, the iOS plugin does offer this feature as well. And that might be the example where you're going to over filterize. I don't know if filterizing is the right word, but you're going to take something and use it much more with an obvious effect than you would in something that would be subtle or professionally done, like this video that we're doing here. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is the case for everything, but the way I'm thinking of it is that the one that's in Final Cut versus the one that's in iOS, they're going to be a bit different. They're just the usage of them is going to be just a little bit different. Okay, so now back into the Final Cut here. I'm not going to use the Overscan, but the vignette is something that I definitely do use. So if I turn on the vignette, you'll notice it immediately. You'll notice that the way it works. But also if I turn on mask mode, you see that it is a circle. Well, we don't want that. So I'm going to adjust that aspect ratio and size and bring this down a little bit. Turn off my mask. And now you can see I've got darkening in the corners. Turn it off, turn it back on, off, back on. Okay. Finally, there's a couple other things that the free portion of the plugin that is available on their website, and I'll go into it towards the end, is you have this monitor feature, and this allows you to show your IRE settings. I believe this is a bug. This should be flipped 180 degrees, but that you've got the IRE ratings here, and then you've got your clipping. Now, obviously, with us crushing the shadows, that's going to be very prominent here. I'm not concerned about that, so that's the way that's going to work. And then down at the very bottom here is the LUT generator, and so if you want, you can create LUTs from all the effects that you've set up in here. The image coloring effects, you can change that all in here. Super cool. So if you're looking to create LUTs and share those amongst a team, if like, okay, any outdoor scene that the sun is going to be involved, I want to use this LUT. And so you set it up exactly like you want it, and then it just goes to town. Go back to the top and do it. We're going to adjust that temperature. So I am going for that LA hot day sunset, right? So I just jammed the temperature compensation all the way over to 100%. And this is the effect that I get. And so now it's way more pronounced. And it definitely looks like, instead of a cool mid-spring morning, it looks like it's been a hot day and the sun's going down, just catching it before it goes down. So these are the kinds of effects that I think are super nice to have easy access to. The film grain, the halation, the bloom, even sometimes the film damage, when used sparingly, except for when you're trying to be so obvious about it that you turn it into something that, again, I think is more suited for the iOS plugin. But it's up to you. You can certainly do it that way if you want. And also, I did want to show you something real quick. As with all the presets, so if I went to film damage, selected custom here, notice what's happening here. Film damage, dust enabled, dust amount, hairs enabled, and of course all those sizes. Scratch is enabled, and then so you've got all these settings just for your film damage if you wanted to do something custom. So if I wanted, I don't know, for some reason I wanted a bunch of hairs on there, I could tune that up, and I can already start to see them here and here and here. They're all over the place now. I kind of liked having free. But pretty much any of the presets, like I've mentioned before, have these custom settings. And so you really want to spend some time digging around. There's plenty of documentation online. There's other tutorials online on how to use this. It took me a little while to kind of get to understand everything, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that hard of an app to understand once you know where everything is and roughly how to use it. You do not have to be a film expert. Heck, I'm not. But if I can do this, if I can get this look that I want, which is, you know, this kind of sunset look, and that's just by turning this one plugin on, I'm down. I really do like the way that this allows me to set the mood very easily. And with all the presets that are in here, it just makes it dead simple. So it will take log data. So if you have your video footage in not Rec 709, but if you have it in log, it'll take that log file. It actually has camera profiles, and then from the profiles it has specific types of settings for like what format you've used in the camera, it's all there. So this is, I mean, it really is. It's a cool app. Dehancer is just, I mean, it's soup to nuts. It's, you really can't, you can't say anything better about it. Now the iOS plugin feels a lot like this interface in the sense that it has all the same features. However, because you're dealing with clips on your iOS device, you're going to have the same potential limitations that you would have if you were using any iOS device. It is largely dependent upon the type of device that you're using and the processing power. I'm going to be running this on an iPhone 14. So now let's just take a look at the iOS plugin and see what that's all about. So this was an image that I took. Look down here at the bottom. You can see as I scroll left or right, I've got crop settings. So if I wanted to crop this, I could. I could do freeform cropping. If I'm trying to do something that is, say, going to a social media, crop it like that. And that's going to go out to my shorts or my Instagram reels or my Facebook stories, however that's going to be. I can set my source to be whatever it is. And in this case, I'm just using this jet as it's passing by. And then I can play around with my temperature compensation. So if I wanted to drag it, make it warmer, make it cooler, I can do that. Exposure, I can play around with all these settings. I don't have to worry about fringing here. Now film stop. How are you going to do this? Well, this is my Super 100. I have the Ultra Max. Remember, I use the Super 100. I can also do the Pro Image 100. I can go over to developer if I wanted to film development. I'm not going to play around with any of these settings right now. I'm going to get to some of the meaty stuff here, and I'm going to go directly to the, well, film grain should be on by default. Sure it is. And then I can go to Halation. And Halation, yeah, I play around with this if I wanted to do something that is, there's the halation effect. Okay, so let's put that red glow around the jet. Do that. Of course, you have bloom settings as well. You can turn bloom on. Now, how do you turn things on and off? You click it at the bottom. So when you have a little blue dot, like here, that indicates that the halation's on. If I wanted to turn that off, I just go to halation, click it again, and it's off. Okay. Vignette, yes, let's go ahead and do a vignette. Now this one's going to be a little bit different because my aspect ratio is going to be more vertical than it is horizontal, right? Film damage I can turn on if I want it to be 15mm like I'm doing here. I can do that. Overscan. Now here's what I was talking about. You could do the overscan, and now you got this film strip. I've got my effect going here, and then film breath. I can turn that on as well and make that. If I wanted to make it look just super insane. That. And then gate weave I can turn on as well. So you've got, I mean, now what it looks like is I've got this, clip, and I'm gonna play it, but it's gonna be a little loud, so I'm gonna turn down my mic real quick. That is the iOS plugin. This works on iPhone, works on iPad. Again, certain models. There's a separate license for this, and that license is something that for the iOS App Store, and that will give you access to it separate of the license for any of the plugins that exist on the desktop. All right, so coming back one last time to the video clip that we were working on. It's now fully rendered, so I'm just going to hit the preview button here. So as you can see here, this thing just, it just works. It works great. Is it without faults? No. I mean, like any other plugin for Final Cut, sometimes you don't know whether it's Final Cut giving you a problem or if it's the plugin. But regardless, I have had some times where, you know, a block that prevents the filter from showing up. So of course you get that red screen. I call it the red screen of death, but it's basically, they're meant to give you a sense of, you know, the plugin's missing or something's not right. Also, sometimes there is a way to reset some of these items. So if you make adjustments, there's supposed to be a reset, like you click on it. But if I just hit reset, right click on it and hit reset parameter, it just takes me right back anyway. Now, Dehancer has several different products that it sells, as well as different price point levels. And so as you can see here, right now I'm looking at the Resolve plugin. I'm using the Final Cut Pro plugin here, and notice that the Final Cut Pro plugin features the motion monitor for free as a separate download. Halation is a separate download and separate purchase if you want. You also have the breath and damage components. Everything that we've covered in this so far has been segmented out into individually purchasable features. So for instance, if you're just interested in halation, you can download and purchase just that. There's also the film grain effect, and then light, which has it includes the film profiles, the grain, the bloom, but does not include the halation. So halation is built into the Pro version, and if I click on buy here, you can see that it's in a 3-month subscription, 6-month subscription, 1 year, or what my personal preference is, lifetime. And the reason why I like lifetime is, quite frankly, it is something that is always with you. You don't have to worry about subscriptions coming up. It is worth it, at least in my opinion. It means that you have 2 seats of the software and you have them for lifetime, and there's no subscriptions or wonky, you know, things to pay down the road. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. There is a discount code down below, so if you're interested in buying the plugin, even if it's just for the 1 month or 3 months subscription, please use that discount code, because that'll get you some money off. Give it a try. It's a lot of fun, and make some cool films out there, would you? All right, take care. See you later. Bye.